Good morning. Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Putnam. I am thankful to all news resources and my team. Following news have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Australian, African, Asian channels and AFP, AP, and Reuters. International Court of UN has issued warrants for US, Israeli, and Hamas leaders. Iranian president and foreign minister's deaths have been confirmed. What will be the repercussions? Deadly boat collision in Canada killing 3 young people. Oldest man in space. Israeli bombing in Rafah yesterday killed 32 people. Taiwan's defiant message to China. Dominican Republic new president. Russia killed more than 100 people in Kharkiv. Prosecutor arrested case in Donald Trump's hush money case. Ships will allow soon in Baltimore, rather near Baltimore. Storm battered Oklahoma and Kansas. Defense Secretary reiterated its support to Ukraine. British court decision for WikiLeaks founder. FDIC chairman is resigning. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industries went down, S&P 500 and Nasdaq went up. Now the news in detail.
Murder and torture, taking hostages, rape and other acts of sexual violence, and outrages upon personal dignity. On this Monday night, the International Criminal Court wants leaders of both Israel and Hamas arrested. The reason?
There should be no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. None.
The ramifications and the reaction. Iran's president and foreign minister confirmed killed in a trucker crash. The potential impact of their deaths. Tragedy at Ontario Lake. The investigation into a deadly boat collision and what witnesses heard. Plus, one man's giant leap delayed by decades.
I was going to be the first black athlete.
Why it took more than 60 years for him to reach space. Record he just shattered.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with an unprecedented move by the world's top criminal court. For the first time, the International Criminal Court is targeting the top leader of a close ally of the United States. The chief prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his defense minister, and 3 Hamas leaders. The filings claim Netanyahu and defense minister Yoav Gallant bear responsibility for multiple war crimes and crimes against humanity. That includes the suspected starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, allegations of intentionally directing attacks against civilians, persecution, and extermination. The arrest warrants against Hamas accuse the group's leader Yahya Sinwar and 2 others of murder and torture, taking hostages, rape, and other acts of sexual violence, and outrages upon personal dignity. The move is a harsh rebuke of Israel's war strategy, and it further scrutinizes Hamas's October attack on Israel. In our top story, Jackson Prosco reports on what difference it could make.
The horrors of a 7-month-old conflict are fueling allegations that both sides have committed war crimes.
International law and the laws of armed conflict apply to everyone.
Prosecutors at the International Criminal Court requested arrest warrants for 3 senior Hamas leaders for their alleged roles in the October 7th attacks, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister are named because of their response, with the ICC alleging crimes including starvation that continue to this day.
Israel, like all states, has the right to defend its population. Those rights, however, do not absolve Israel of its obligations to comply with international humanitarian law.
Some international law experts applauded the decision.
No matter what, whether these arrest warrants are enforced, they clearly say that some very serious crimes are likely occurring and that must stop.
In the conflict, neither side is happy.
As Jackson mentioned, there are more concerns for civilian casualties in Gaza today as fighting between Israel and Hamas re-intensified in the north, including at the Jabalia refugee camp. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says there have been more than 100 Palestinian deaths since yesterday. That includes casualties from overnight strikes in the south in Rafah, despite warnings from the U.S. to back down from its impending attack. Israel's defense minister says the country is committed to broadening the ground operation there. Between 300,000 and 400,000 refugees remain in Rafah. The bodies of Iran's president and foreign minister have been recovered from a helicopter crash site in a mountainous region. A massive search was launched after the helicopter they were in failed to return from a meeting near Azerbaijan. 5 days of national mourning are underway in Iran, but as Crystal Gamansing reports, outside the country, there have been celebrations.
Close-up images of twisted metal were broadcast on Iran state TV following the discovery of a helicopter.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange won a significant legal victory today. A British court ruled he can appeal against extradition to the United States on espionage charges. Hundreds of supporters cheered as the ruling was handed down. Assange has been held in a London prison since 2019. He faces charges in the United States over his website's publication of a trove of classified documents. An inquiry is slamming Britain for infecting thousands of people with tainted blood and covering it up. The probe found British authorities in the country's public health service knowingly exposed patients to deadly infections and hid the truth for decades. Today, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak apologized to the victims and their families and called it a day of shame.
And the result of this inquiry should shake our nation to its core. This should have been avoided. It was known these treatments were contaminated. Warnings were ignored repeatedly. Time and again, people in positions of power and trust had the chance to stop the transmission of those infections.
An estimated 3,000 people are believed to have died in the UK, and 30,000 people were infected after receiving blood or blood products tainted with HIV or hepatitis between the 1970s and 1990s. Crews in Baltimore have refloated the cargo ship that destroyed the Francis Scott Key Bridge in March. Beginning before dawn, several tugboats pulled the ship back to a nearby terminal. The Dali had been stuck under tons of wreckage after it slammed into a bridge pillar, causing it all to collapse. 6 construction workers were killed. Officials hope to fully reopen the shipping channel by the end of the month. We're learning much more tonight about a horrific boat crash near Kingston, Ontario. It claimed the lives of 3 young adults and left 5 other people injured. It happened around nightfall on Saturday. 2 boats collided on picturesque Boggs Lake in an area known as Bucks Bay. Global Sean O'Shea traveled there today and learned more about what happened.
For cottage owners and anyone who loves a lake, the May long weekend holds a special place in a Canadian calendar. But on Bob's Lake, north of Kingston, Ontario, the first unofficial long weekend of summer is being marked in the worst possible way, after these 2 small boats collided and 3 people died.
I heard a smash and then I yelled out to see if everybody all right.
Paul Hogan lives on the water nearby. So does Bob Main.
We heard a loud crash, incredibly loud crash.
It happened around 9:30 Saturday evening. Neighbors say it was dark. There was no moonlight at the time. The 2 boats are sandwiched together. This fiberglass speedboat named Why Wouldn't Ya appeared to strike a metal fishing boat from behind.
That speedboat it's been known to be driving fairly quickly.
The boat's owner had just posted on Facebook, writing he was looking forward to the first rip of the season tomorrow. As for speed, the boat owner wrote, "It's time to put the effing hammer down."
That boat is an incredibly fast boat. I did not know the owner. I know the boat. Everybody knows that boat.
The speed limit in this part of the lake is 10 kilometers per hour. Signs read dead slow, no wake, and be nice, go slow. Lake residents say everyone operating a vessel here knows the rules, or should. But like vehicles on highways, limits are often ignored.
He will come out here and just open it up, and it goes from like 0 to 60 in seconds. It's that powerful.
Both boats were towed in and taken away for examination. In addition to the 3 people who died, 5 people on the boats were hospitalized with injuries.
This collision is the subject of a provincial police investigation. No charges have been laid yet. This a reminder to boaters about the risks on the water in the summer. Farah.
Sean O'Shea in Bob's Lake, Ontario. Thank you, Sean. The federal government is launching what it calls a national action plan to combat auto theft. The plan includes tougher penalties for thieves and improved information sharing between governments, police, and customs officials. It also aims to make improvements to allow more shipping containers to be examined before they leave the country.
One of the most efficient ways, again based on this intelligence information, may be to have a CBSA officer actually open the back of a container. Open quickly, look in the container, and then close it. But it's about deploying those resources, and that's exactly what we're doing, including hiring more officers.
New data from the Insurance Bureau of Canada shows insurance claims for stolen vehicles skyrocketed to a record $1.5 billion in 2023. Turning the tables on scammers. Coming up, what happened when one man who was preyed on decided to play along? Red Lobster has filed for bankruptcy protection. The American restaurant chain filed in a Florida court after securing $136 million in financing commitments from its lenders. Red Lobster says its restaurants will remain open and operate as usual during the bankruptcy proceedings. However, it plans to reduce its locations and pursue a sale of its assets. Red Lobster has about 700 locations around the world, including more than 25 in Canada. Many of us know someone who's fallen victim to a phone scam, but it's increasingly getting harder to detect fraud because of the rise of artificial intelligence. A Calgary senior recently got a phone call from someone posing as his nephew asking for money to get out of jail. Demacia De Silva reports on how the scammer got busted.
The call came out of nowhere.
Hello? Hi. Do you know who this is? Do you not know me, Uncle Mike?
The caller said he was Michael O'Reilly's nephew, Patrick. He'd been in a car crash.
I broke my nose, that's probably why you don't recognize the voice.
And needed money to get out of jail.
I just have to pay $6 to get released, so I'll just call to see if you can help me out in any way.
What about Tom?
Tom is the real Patrick's father, something the scammer didn't seem to know.
I thought Tom would help you along. Hello? Hello? Do you not have Tom's number? You should know your dad's number off by heart, for sake. What's wrong with you?
The jig was definitely up, and the scammer hung up.
He was very convincing. He was very convincing. I did know it was a scam, so I just sort of played him along.
Unfortunately, many don't catch on. Calgary police have received 32 reports of seniors losing money since the start of 2024. The total amount defrauded, $180K.
Voice mimicking technologies come a long way.
Cybersecurity experts say the rise of technology has led to a rise in fraud, and things like chat, GPT, and AI can increasingly mimic voices and speech.
Try to find some way to verify before you actually take an action that could come back to bite you. So even if you're convinced you're talking to your nephew and he really needs help, insisting on calling him back at his normal phone number. If you're talking to a scammer who's impersonating him, they won't be able to answer his phone.
If all fails, ask specific, not leading questions.
If you start trying to ask for more and more details, that is one place where AI starts to show itself.
Right, that's terrible.
The scammer showed himself pretty early on to Michael O'Reilly. He didn't get any money out of him, just a few chuckles. Demacia De Silva, Global News.
Warnings of a potential massacre ahead. The pleas for world leaders to address the crisis in Sudan. Canada and the international community are being warned by a group of legal experts and analysts about the possibility of an imminent massacre in Sudan. The crowded city of El Fasher in the Darfur region is nearly surrounded by a paramilitary group accused of large-scale, ethnically motivated atrocities during the country's year-long civil war. And as Redmond Shannon reports, time is running short for world leaders to take action.
Those who escape catastrophic hunger in Sudan's war often instead face the threat of mass murder and sexual violence. A panel of United Nations experts says there was an ethnically motivated massacre against non-Arab groups in Darfur last year. They said more than 10,000 were killed when the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, captured the city of El Geneina. A Canadian human rights non-governmental organisation recently led an analysis of these attacks.
We came to the clear, definitive legal conclusions that the RSF is committing genocide in Darfur.
It echoes the Darfur atrocities of 2 decades ago, and there are fears the worst is yet to come in the larger city of El Fasher. It is almost surrounded by the RSF. Satellite images in recent days show the apparent burning of homes in its outer neighbourhoods.
What this means is that we're actually able to see in real time how this might unfold, and this provides the international community with an opportunity to engage before it happens.
Sudanese analyst Kholoud Khair says the re-establishment of an international peacekeeping force for Sudan is crucial, but that takes time and political will. She says any efforts for peace talks must engage with the United Arab Emirates and Russia over their alleged involvement in the war. Canada recently issued sanctions against Sudanese entities. Global Affairs Canada told Global News it is exploring all options to ensure those responsible for human rights violations are held to account.
But none have really articulated well exactly what that looks like, and exactly what those consequences will mean for the different actors at different levels.
The International Criminal Court is investigating possible war crimes in Darfur, a process that also takes time. In the interim, the world is watching from above as the battle for El Fasher ploughs ahead. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
A lifelong dream finally realized for an historic astronaut. A man once poised to become America's first black astronaut has made it to space for the first time 60 years later. Ed Dwight rocketed beyond the Earth's atmosphere on board the Blue Origin, run by billionaire Jeff Bezos. Dwight also hit a new milestone, edging out a notable Canadian. Heidi Petracek on the significance of his trip to space and back.
It's likely 90-year-old Ed Dwight's feet still haven't touched the ground even after his commercial space flight landed back on Earth Sunday.
I thought I really didn't need this in my life, but now I need it in my life.
Dwight was among the crew of 6 launched into space on Blue Origin's autonomous suborbital rocket system. The rocket reached 347,000 feet, the 11-minute flight, enough to finally make Dwight an astronaut.
I was going to be the first black astronaut. I completed astronaut training.
A U.S. Air Force captain, Dwight was recommended for the NASA Astronaut Corps in 1963, but wasn't selected, so he left the service, citing racial politics, and went on to become a celebrated sculptor. The goal of reaching space abandoned until now.
For self-satisfaction, yes, but more importantly, to satisfy all the wonderful people that have showered me with love.
Ed Dwight's call sign yesterday was justice, and when he landed and he called in that he was doing all right, he said, this is call sign justice, and justice is served.
Dwight also set a new record for the oldest person to ever reach space.
Oh, wow.
The previous record holder, Canadian actor and sci-fi icon William Shatner, was nearly 2 months younger when he took the trip more than 2 years ago.
Oh, thank you.
Blue Origin doesn't publish its pricing, but word is tickets run upwards of $250,000 US. American nonprofit Space for Humanity, which advocates for access to space for all, pitched in for Dwight's seat, knowing it would make an impact.
We need folks to be inspired and believe that they can make it, just like Ed did yesterday.
After he landed, Dwight called the experience life-changing. The dream once pushed aside, fulfilled 60 years later. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
That smile says everything. And that's Global National for this Monday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is this view of Ingonish Island, Nova Scotia. We love seeing your Canada, so email us your photos at viewers@globalnational.com. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.
Breaking news, the prosecution rests. Now it's Donald Trump's turn. Tonight, the bombshell moment in the so-called hush money trial. Michael Cohen admits to stealing tens of thousands of dollars from the Trump Organization.
They have no case, they have no crime.
What does the revelation from the star witness mean for the state's case? The CBS Evening News starts now. Tonight, a dramatic day in court. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us. The first ever criminal trial of a former American president is nearing an end. Late today, the prosecution has rested, and now Donald Trump's legal team has the case. Closing arguments could begin in about a week, and then the former president's fate will be in the hands of a jury. Witnesses on the stand today made for what some experts are describing as a wild day. Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, admitted under oath to stealing money from the Trump Organization during an intense cross-examination. And then fireworks during testimony of a defense witness that led to the judge clearing the courtroom and reprimanding the witness for rolling his eyes and making comments under his breath. Well, there's still one big question tonight. Will Donald Trump take the stand in his own defense? Here's CBS's Robert Costa, who was inside the courthouse.
Michael Cohen has already had his credibility challenged, and then came today's admission that he stole tens of thousands of dollars from Donald Trump and his company. Cohen testified that in 2017, the Trump Organization owed a technology company $50,000, and that he paid them about $20,000 in cash in a brown paper bag, but kept the rest. You stole from the Trump Organization, right? Asked Trump attorney Todd Blanche. Yes, sir, Cohen said.
Michael Cohen has admitted to stealing from the Trump Organization. Doesn't matter for this case.
It may matter a lot to some juror, and it may matter not at all to others. Michael Cohen is such a proven liar that why would it surprise us that he's also a thief?
Cohen defended his action, saying he was angry his bonus had been cut and felt he was owed the money. I just felt like it was almost self-help, he said. Cohen is the sole witness to directly link Trump to the hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels, which are at the heart of the case. Trump has been charged with falsifying business records to conceal the transactions.
They paid a legal expense and they marked it legal expense.
Blanche cast Cohen as someone who used Trump's name to enrich himself, earning about $4 million from books and podcasts, and even discussing a TV show about himself called The Fixer.
I have fixed things, but I am no longer your fixer, Mr. Trump.
With the defense repeatedly calling Cohen's credibility into question, prosecutor Susan Hoffinger reminded the jury that Michael Cohen isn't the defendant. Are you actually on trial here in this case, she asked. Cohen's answer, no.
Late today, Trump lawyer Todd Blanche moved to dismiss the entire case, and sources close to Trump's legal team tell me they don't expect Trump at this point to take the stand. They see too many potential vulnerabilities should he ever get up there as a witness. Nora.
Robert Costa, thank you very much. Well, tonight, the world is watching closely what happens next in Iran after the country's ultra-conservative leader was killed in a helicopter crash. The State Department tonight is calling him a brutal participant in the repression of the Iranian people. And as CBS's Charlie Daggett reports, who succeeds him has global consequence.
In the dense fog at first light, Iranian state media showed what it said was the crash site, a trail of twisted metal and debris. Rescue teams pulled bodies from the wreckage, all 8 people killed when the chopper came down in remote mountainous terrain, where President Ibrahim Raisi and the foreign minister had been on a trip near the border with Azerbaijan. Mourners gathered in Tehran and in other cities across the country. But in cities like Berlin and London, Iranian demonstrators celebrated the death of the former prosecutor known as the Butcher of Tehran. On his watch as president, enforcing that brutal crackdown on dissidents following the death almost 2 years ago of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who was detained for allegedly not wearing a headscarf properly. And that massive drone and missile attack against Israel just last month, in addition to backing Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi rebels. Raisi was seen as a possible successor to the 85-year-old supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But not the only one. Khamenei's son Mojtaba is also considered a frontrunner and now possibly a favorite. The U.S. State Department said Iran had asked for U.S. assistance after the crash but was unable to provide it for logistical reasons and dismissed accusations that U.S. sanctions were to blame for restricting aviation parts.
Ultimately, it's the Iranian government that is responsible for the decision to fly a 45-year-old helicopter in what was described as poor weather conditions.
Today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was asked whether he was concerned Iran might try to blame the U.S. for the crash, Nora. He said the United States had no part to play in that crash. That is a fact, plain and simple.
Charlie Daggett, thank you. Now to some breaking news out of the White House. President Biden not holding back, sharply criticizing the request for an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from an international criminal court prosecutor.
But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
The Instagram algorithm has recently changed, and if you've been seeing a decrease in the amount of reach that you're getting, it's probably not your fault. It's probably
is not genocide. We reject that.
CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb has more now from East Jerusalem.
No foot soldier, no commander, no civilian leader. No one can act with impunity.
The ICC's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, making it clear that Hamas's October 7th attack and Israel's response to it allegedly breached international rules of war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, named alongside Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity, responded with fury.
What a travesty of justice. What a disgrace.
The potential arrest warrant comes as Netanyahu is under growing political pressure at home. Still, reaction at this demonstration to the potential of an arrest warrant for a prime minister many here want out of power was mixed.
What is your reaction?
I want to beat them on both cheeks.
You think that Mr. Netanyahu should be tried at the head?
Yes, and Gallant too.
What's your reaction? There's no way you can compare Hamas and Hamas leaders to anything our leaders have done. Definitely, there's just no match.
3 of Hamas's senior leaders, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Deif, and Ismail Haniyeh, may also face ICC arrest warrants for crimes including extermination, murder, hostage-taking, rape and sexual violence, and torture. Prominent human rights lawyer Amal Clooney also announced she was part of a panel of legal experts that recommended the arrest warrants. Neither the U.S. nor Israel recognize the ICC's authority, but just like Vladimir Putin for his actions in Ukraine, Netanyahu could have a warrant out for his arrest in more than 100 countries.
But it could take up to 2 months for any potential arrest warrants to be issued, as the court now has to decide not only whether to do so, but also if the case against the leaders of Israel and Hamas can proceed. Nora.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you very much. The Israel-Hamas war is a big issue on the campaign trail, as President Biden saw firsthand in the crucial battleground state of Georgia, where he gave a commencement address at Morehouse College. Both he and former President Trump are trying to fire up their bases with 6 months to Election Day. CBS's Weijia Jiang has the latest.
Over the weekend, as President Biden delivered a commencement address at Morehouse, an all-male historically black college in Georgia, several students refused to stand. Some even turned their backs. Biden acknowledged their feelings about Gaza, as well as challenges here at home.
What does it mean, as you've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Black voters, especially men, helped Biden win 4 years ago. From Georgia to a campaign stop at the NAACP in Michigan, another critical swing state, Biden made his case against former President Donald Trump.
And you're the reason Donald Trump's going to be a loser again.
In Dallas, Trump focused on his base too, with a fiery speech at the National Rifle Association convention.
In my second term, we will roll back every Biden attack on the Second Amendment.
Trump boasted about his poll numbers.
Like The Apprentice, Joe, you're fired!
The latest CBS News poll in 2 key states shows Trump leading by 9 points in Florida and 5 points in Arizona, where immigration is a major issue. Many Democrats are urging Biden to talk more about border security, including Michigan Senator Gary Peters.
Absolutely, and that's what the campaign is about, and the campaign to make sure people have that information.
Well, just this morning, Biden issued a new statement urging Congress to pass a border bill. He and Trump are preparing to face off in their first debate of 2024, now just about 5 weeks away.
Nora, Lisa Jane, thank you so much. Tonight, a new line of powerful storms is targeting the heartland with an even greater threat of tornadoes, high wind, and hail for Tuesday. For more, let's bring in meteorologist Mike Bett at the weather. Good evening, Mike.
Nora, good evening. We are staring down a multi-day severe weather threat across the...
For an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from an international criminal court prosecutor.
Well, let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb has more now from East Jerusalem.
No foot soldier, no commander, no civilian leader. No one can act with impunity.
The ICC's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, making it clear that Hamas's October 7th attack and Israel's response to it allegedly breached international rules of war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, named alongside Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity, responded with fury.
What a travesty of justice. What a disgrace.
The potential arrest warrant comes as Netanyahu is under growing political pressure at home. Still, reaction at this demonstration to the potential of an arrest warrant for a prime minister many here want out of power was mixed. What is your reaction?
I want to kiss them on both cheeks.
You think that Mr. Netanyahu should be tried at The Hague?
Yes. And Gallant too.
What's your reaction?
There's no way you can compare Hamas and Hamas leaders to anything our leaders have done. Definitely, there's just no match.
3 of Hamas's senior leaders, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Deif, and Ismail Haniyeh, may also face ICC arrest warrants for crimes including extermination, murder, hostage-taking, rape and sexual violence, and torture. Prominent human rights lawyer Amal Clooney also announced she was part of a panel of legal experts that recommended the arrest warrants. Neither the U.S. nor Israel recognize the ICC's authority, but just like Vladimir Putin for his actions in Ukraine, Netanyahu could have a warrant out for his arrest in more than 100 countries. But it could take up to 2 months for any potential arrest warrants to be issued, as the court now has to decide not only whether to do so, but also if the case against the leaders of Israel and Hamas can proceed. Nora.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you very much. The Israel-Hamas war is a big issue on the campaign trail, as President Biden saw firsthand in the crucial battleground state of Georgia, where he gave a commencement address at Morehouse College. Both he and former President Trump are trying to fire up their bases with 6 months to Election Day. CBS's Lisa Jane has the latest.
Over the weekend, as President Biden delivered a commencement address at Morehouse, an all-male historically black college in Georgia, several students refused to stand. Some even turned their backs. Biden acknowledged their feelings about Gaza, as well as challenges here at home.
What does it mean, as you've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Black voters, especially men, helped Biden win 4 years ago. From Georgia to a campaign stop at the NAACP in Michigan, another critical swing state, Biden made his case against former President Donald Trump.
You're the reason Donald Trump's going to be a loser again.
In Dallas, Trump focused on his base too, with a fiery speech at the National Rifle Association convention.
In my second term, we will roll back every Biden attack on the Second Amendment.
Trump boasted about his poll numbers.
Like The Apprentice, Joe, you're fired!
The latest CBS News poll in 2 key states shows Trump leading by 9 points in Florida and 5 points in Arizona, where immigration is a major issue. Many Democrats are urging Biden to talk more about border security, including Michigan Senator Gary Peters.
Absolutely, and that's what the campaign is about, and the campaign to make sure people have that information.
Well, just this morning, Biden issued a new statement urging Congress to pass a border bill. He and Trump are preparing to face off in their first debate of 2024, now just about 5 weeks away. Nora.
Lisa Jane, thank you so much. Tonight, a new line of powerful storms is targeting the heartland with an even greater threat of tornadoes, high wind, and hail for Tuesday. For more, let's bring in meteorologist Mike Bett from our partners at the Weather Channel. Good evening, Mike.
Nora, good evening. We are staring down a multi-day severe weather threat across the plains in the Midwest. This is the area on Tuesday to watch, especially there along I-80, Des Moines over toward the Quad Cities, but large areas could be affected. We'll have some pretty strong low-level winds and upper-level winds. Really what that will lead to is a straight-line wind event, especially as the system unfolds tomorrow. Also watching for winds that could be 75 miles per hour or greater hurricane force winds could be possible from these storms. We'll have a lot of storms in the morning. The flood risk will definitely be prevalent, but then more storms for the afternoon as the whole system races through the upper Midwest. And look at that big squall line that forms for us here that stretches from the Great Lakes all the way down through the Mid-South. As I alluded to, Nora, because so much heavy rain is coming out of the storm system, we're definitely going to watch for flooding from the Midwest all the way down through Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Mike Bettis, thank you. A major milestone today towards restoring business as usual at the Port of Baltimore. This time-lapse video shows the massive cargo ship that brought down the Francis Scott Key Bridge nearly 8 weeks ago being towed into port. The front of the ship still holds large pieces of steel and concrete from the accident. The crew, mostly from India, remains stuck aboard the ship, many with expired visas. Now to our historic interview with Pope Francis, where we discussed a wide range of issues impacting the world. You saw some of it on last night's 60 Minutes, including his views on the war in Gaza, migrants, and same-sex couples. Tonight, we'll have much more with the Pope in a one-hour special, including one topic he's been very outspoken about, climate change. How worried are you about climate change?
Lamentablemente, hemos llegado a un punto.
Unfortunately, we've gotten to a point of no return. It's sad, but that's what it is.
El recalentamiento
Global warming is a serious problem.
es grave. El cambio climático en este momento
Climate change at this moment is a road to death. A road to death, eh?
y
And it is an artificial climate change, no? Something provoked, not the normal climate change, right?
You have placed blame on wealthy countries.
en una parte sí, porque son
In great measure, yes. Because they are the ones that have more of an economy and an energy based on fossil fuels that are creating the situation, right? They are the countries that can make the most difference, given their industry and all, aren't they? But it is very difficult to create an awareness of this. They hold a conference, everybody's in agreement, they all sign,
y después bye bye.
and then bye-bye. But we have to be very clear. Global warming is alarming.
And you can watch more of our extensive interview with Pope Francis. That's tonight at 10, 9 Central, right here on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. Once America's favorite seafood chain, Red Lobster, files for bankruptcy protection. We've got the details next. America's largest seafood restaurant chain, Red Lobster, is in a serious financial pinch and filing for bankruptcy protection. CBS's Nikki Batiste reports on why the once popular chain has struggled to reel in customers.
Live Maine lobster, just the way you like it.
After a 56-year cultural climb,
Red Lobster for seafood loving.
Seafood giant Red Lobster is having trouble staying afloat.
Hopefully they'll just reorganize and they'll be back on their feet soon.
The casual dining hotspot has struggled since the pandemic. It's lost 30% of its customers and has had at least 4 CEOs in the last 5 years.
Ultimate endless shrimp is here.
Also, an attempt to lure more customers in with $20 endless shrimp backfired, costing the company $11 million. Diners would share their tallies on social media.
61. Wow. If you're a shrimp lover,
It's a pretty good deal. I set a new record at my local Red Lobster.
In its bankruptcy filing, Red Lobster blamed failed or ill-advised strategic initiatives and increased competition within the restaurant industry. Red Lobster's downfall comes at a time when eating out is more expensive than ever, with restaurant prices climbing higher and faster than grocery costs. In an effort to bring back inflation-weary consumers, McDonald's is planning to offer a $5 meal this summer, and Target has dropped prices on 5,000 items.
If you're in the business of luring people in to kind of have a little splurge, these are not the times where people feel like they can splurge.
There are about 550 restaurants across the U.S. So far, at least 93 have closed. Red Lobster says it hopes to keep open as many locations as possible through the bankruptcy process. Nora?
All right, Nikki Batiste outside of Red Lobster. Thank you. Is climate change to blame for putting the lives of California birds at risk? CBS's Carter Evans investigates.
If these pelicans work in this wildlife rehab center, they might not survive in the wild. Not because they're sick, because they're starving. And scientists are trying to understand why. The story's coming up.
Now to a mystery along the California coast. One of America's most beloved seabirds, the pelican, is struggling to survive, and nobody knows why. In tonight's Climate Watch, CBS's Carter Evans looks at the problem and the people trying to help.
It shouldn't be this easy to catch a pelican, but these birds are weak because they're starving.
The skin and bone is dead.
Over the last month, pelican rescue volunteer Zoli Tablet has captured a growing number of hungry birds in Southern California.
I'm like the ambulance, the first line, the EMT.
He brings the weakest ones to the Wetlands and Wildlife Center.
We have become Camp Pelican.
Executive Director Debbie McGuire showed us the triage inside with pelican patients packed in tents and crates.
Around this time of year, how many pelicans would you normally have?
Maybe a dozen.
How many do you have now?
99.
Up and down the coast of California, brown pelicans are coming into rescue centers emaciated and dying.
We're not seeing any symptoms of illness.
Just starvation, says veterinarian Elizabeth Wood. But many do have this in common.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of hooks, my friend.
All those hooks.
They're getting closer to fishing boats, they're getting closer to fishing hooks, they're getting desperate.
Pelicans can only dive down about 6 feet to catch small fish.
There's plenty of bait fish out there in the ocean right now, but for some reason when they dive, they're coming up empty.
One theory, rough weather conditions might be causing the fish to swim too deep.
They are really hungry.
The recovery pelicans are ravenous. Here they eat about 500 pounds a day.
$45 per bird per day, so about $4,500 a day just for the pelicans.
We don't know what's happening out there and whether it's just going to happen again if we release them.
That could mean long-term care until there's an answer or the money runs out. Carter Evans, CBS News, Huntington Beach, California.
Dramatic video shows a man being lifted to safety after he was thrown from his car when it went off a cliff in Northern California. Officials say the man was found several hundred feet below his car on Sunday morning. A rescue helicopter was sent to the scene after the driver's automatic crash notification system recorded the wreck. And listen to this, he is expected to survive. Heart of America is next with gymnastics superstar Simone Biles striking gold again.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Teva.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America, the legendary Simone Biles is back in action, and she did something this weekend that she hasn't done since suffering a bout of the twisties at the Tokyo Games in 2021. The most decorated gymnast in history wowed the crowd at the U.S. Classic with a new floor routine that included the return of her signature move, the Biles 2, a triple twisting double flip to the music of Taylor Swift's hit song, Ready For It. Biles dominated the field to win her 7th all-around title as she looks to regain the top spot on the podium at the Paris Games in July, and we will certainly be cheering her on step, flip, and twist of the way. The incredible Simone Biles, she is tonight's Heart of America. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Watch our special tonight.
Tonight, breaking news in New York City. The drama inside the courtroom where Donald Trump's lawyers got Michael Cohen to admit to. Then the judge furious with a defense witness clearing the courtroom. Also tonight, the hardline president of Iran dead in a helicopter crash, what we know. And here at home, we're tracking new and severe storms moving into several states. First tonight, the judge in Donald Trump's criminal trial furious with a witness put on the stand by Donald Trump's lawyers. Why the judge cleared that courtroom. And it came after a dramatic moment with Michael Cohen. What he admitted to, Aaron Katersky is there. Also tonight, the new images coming in. The hardline president of Iran dead tonight, killed in that helicopter crash. What led to the crash? And tonight we have learned Iran reached out to the U.S. for help after the crash. Arthur Raddatz with late reporting. Tonight, President Biden now lashing out at the chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court, who is now seeking an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and leaders of Hamas. Here in the U.S. tonight, the new severe storm threat we're watching at this hour across several states. Terrifying tornadoes in a very close call already. You'll see the video. Tonight, the major headline following the release of that graphic hotel surveillance video showing Sean Diddy Combs attacking his then-girlfriend. Well, tonight here, Sean Combs and the new video of him apologizing for his actions. You'll hear what he says in this video. The deadly bridge collapse in Baltimore, and tonight the massive cargo ship has now been moved nearly 2 months later. That crew still on board. The new headline tonight after the arrest of the world's #1 golfer in Louisville. What we've now learned about this case. Outside New York City at this hour, the tent in the front yard. Accused serial killer Rex Heuermann. Authorities have now returned to the home and what we know. Tonight, what Target has now done to compete with Walmart and why customers could be the winners here. And after Kevin Costner and his emotional, unexpected moment, breaking down in tears after a 7-minute standing ovation. What led to this moment?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to start another week with all of you at home. We do begin tonight with the fireworks inside that New York City courtroom today. The judge in Donald Trump's criminal trial, furious with a witness put on the stand by Donald Trump's defense team. The judge so angry at one point.
Work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to DemocracyNow, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Iran has declared 5 days of mourning after Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian died Sunday in a helicopter crash near the border with Azerbaijan. The crash occurred amidst heavy fog in a mountainous area. It took rescue workers more than 16 hours to reach the crash site. Raisi had led Iran since 2021 and was widely seen as a possible successor to Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who is 85 years old. Iran will hold presidential elections in 50 days. Vice President Mohammad Mokhbar has taken over as interim president. We'll have more on Iran after headlines. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has announced he's seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 leaders of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, and Mohammed Deif. In an interview today with CNN's Christiana Manpour, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan detailed the charges against Netanyahu.
We've applied for warrants. Of course, the judges must determine whether or not to issue them, but we've applied today. We'll apply for warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and also Minister of Defense Gallant for the crimes of causing extermination, causing starvation as a method of war, including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies, deliberately targeting civilians in conflict.
Karim Khan said the charges against the Hamas leaders include extermination, murder, taking of hostages, rape, and sexual assault in detention, unquote. A panel of International Criminal Court judges will now decide if arrest warrants should be issued. In Gaza, Israel is threatening to expand its attack on the southern city of Rafah despite widespread international condemnation. The UN estimates 800,000 Palestinians have fled Rafah in recent weeks. Many of the displaced had sought refuge in Rafah after losing their homes in other parts of Gaza. Over the weekend, Israeli strikes on the Nuseirat refugee camp killed at least 32 people, including 10 women and 7 children. The overall official death toll has topped 35,400. Across Gaza, Palestinians say they have no safe place to go.
Are these America's gifts for us? Instead of pitying us, instead of telling Israel to stop. Enough. That's injustice. Where are the Arab leaders? Where are the Muslim leaders? Where is the Islamic Ummah? Where are the men of Islam? Where are the Arab men to see our conditions? Let them stop the killing. Let them stop the destruction. Our houses have been destroyed. People can't find a house to live in. People are displaced in tents. People have been suffering. What's happening to us is injustice. This is enough. Someone needs to have mercy. No one is having mercy on us. No one has humanity.
Israel is also laying siege to Al-Adha Hospital in North Gaza. Doctors Without Borders reports the hospital has run out of drinking water. On Sunday, the UN's top humanitarian chief, Martin Griffiths, said Israel's stranglehold on aid reaching Gaza is having apocalyptic consequences. Israeli opposition leader Benny Gantz has threatened to leave the coalition government unless Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu develops a plan for a post-war Gaza. This comes as protests continue in Israel, calling for a ceasefire and a deal to release all the remaining hostages, dead or alive, held in Gaza. On Sunday, President Biden addressed the graduating class of Morehouse College, the prestigious black college in Atlanta, whose alum include Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Some students turned their backs on the president to protest his Gaza policies. Morehouse valedictorian D'Angelo Fletcher, who had a Palestinian flag affixed to his graduation cap, called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
It is my stance as a Morehouse man, nay, as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
President Biden was seen on video applauding D'Angelo Fletcher's calls for a permanent ceasefire. During his speech, Biden also called for an immediate ceasefire. Biden's speech came just days after his administration notified Congress of its plans to send another $1 billion in arms to Israel, including tank ammunition, mortars, and tactical vehicles. Later on Sunday, protesters gathered in Detroit, where President Biden addressed an NAACP dinner. We'll speak to two Morehouse professors later in the program. One turned her back on Biden, another held up a flag of the Democratic Republic of Congo behind the president as he spoke. In news from Britain, the High Court in London has granted permission to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to appeal his extradition to the United States. The decision came after a critical hearing in London that Assange did not attend due to health reasons. Assange has been held in London's Belmarsh prison for 5 years. If extradited and convicted in the U.S., he faces up to 175 years in prison. We'll have more on this later in the broadcast. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo say they thwarted an attempted coup in the capital Kinshasa on Sunday. Armed men attempted to storm the presidential palace as well as the home of a key lawmaker in an attempt to overthrow President Felix Tshisekedi's government. Around 50 people involved in the plot were arrested, including 3 U.S. citizens. The apparent coup leader, Congolese opposition figure Christian Malanga, died during the attack. Malanga had lived in exile in the United States for over a decade. In Taiwan, new President William Lai Ching-te delivered a defiant message to China after he was sworn in earlier today.
I also want to urge China to stop intimidating Taiwan politically and militarily, and to take on the global responsibility with Taiwan to work hard on maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and in the region, to ensure the world is without the fear of war breaking out.
In response, Beijing said, quote, Taiwan independence is a dead end, unquote. China also announced sanctions against a number of U.S. companies involved in arms sales to Taiwan. In the Dominican Republic, President Luis Abinader easily won a second term in Sunday's election. Abinader has taken a hardline approach to immigration, increasing raids and deportations of Haitians and shutting down migration from Haiti, despite the dire humanitarian situation in the neighboring country. He also began construction of a 100-mile concrete wall along the border with Haiti. At least 11 people died in Ukraine's Kharkiv region on Sunday as Russia intensifies its offensive in northeastern Ukraine. This comes as Ukrainian officials have asked the United States and other NATO nations to send troops to Ukraine to help train new recruits. On Thursday, the chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Brown, hinted such a plan is being discussed. He said, quote, we'll get there eventually over time. In Alabama, workers at 2 Mercedes-Benz plants voted against joining the United Auto Workers. 56% of the nearly 5,000 votes rejected the UAW after a massive pressure campaign by Mercedes and Republican leaders, including Alabama Governor Kay Ivey. UAW President Sean Payne said the result will not deter the union in its bid to organize the South.
I'm not scared at all. I mean, I believe workers want unions. I believe they want justice, and we're going to keep doing what we do. Right? We're going to keep winning.
In California, the man who broke into the home of then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and attacked her 82-year-old husband with a hammer has been sentenced to a total of 30 years in prison. During the trial, David DePape admitted he wanted to take Nancy Pelosi hostage to interrogate her, but she wasn't home when he broke into her home just before the 2022 midterm elections. And in Texas, the death toll from last week's storms in Houston rose to 7 people. Some 240,000 customers still did not have electricity by Sunday evening as the area now contends with a heat wave with temperatures topping 90 degrees Sunday. President Biden's issued a disaster declaration for the region. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. On the NewsHour tonight, the International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Iran's president and foreign minister are killed in a helicopter crash, raising questions about the future leadership of the country.
It will definitely bring the resistance in Iran a big step forward. This was a big blow for Khamenei, for the dictatorship in Iran.
And the prosecution rests its case in former President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial.
Major forecasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. In an unprecedented announcement, the International Criminal Court today said it was seeking warrants to arrest not only the leaders of Hamas, but also the elected leadership of Israel on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
President Biden called it outrageous, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a, quote, blood libel, but prosecutor Karim Khan defended his decision. Nick Schifrin starts our coverage.
My office charges Netanyahu and Gallant as co-perpetrators.
From The Hague today, devastating and divisive allegations by International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan, accusing Israel of, quote, intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population, and, quote, starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, and requesting arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and defense minister.
Road in this regard.
Yuval Shani and Adol Haq, we thank you both for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
In the day's other headlines, the container ship that caused the deadly bridge collapse in Baltimore has finally returned to port. This morning, the Dali made the slow 2.5-mile journey back to land, escorted by tugboats. Its bow is still covered in damaged containers, steel, and concrete. Port officials said today they're getting closer to fully reopening the channel.
So as far as the depth and the draft that's necessary to bring the larger vessels in, that depth is there. We just don't have the width. There's still material, there's still bridge sections that are in place. But as the Army Corps, the Unified Command has indicated, they're looking at the end of May.
In the meantime, shipping company officials are working on allowing the ship's 21 crew members to disembark. They've stayed on board for maintenance and to help investigators determine what led to the crash. Wind and hail battered large parts of Oklahoma and Kansas last night as the latest bout of severe weather sweeps through the region. Nearly 20 homes were damaged in western Oklahoma. Officials say 2 people were injured. The National Weather Service said they received 13 tornado reports across 3 states. The risk of severe storms is expected to continue into early Tuesday. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is vowing to keep the flow of weapons moving to Ukraine as Russia intensifies its attacks on the country's northeastern region of Kharkiv. Austin spoke this morning to a virtual meeting of some 50 defense leaders from Europe and around the world. He promised that weapons would keep coming week after week.
We are again delivering urgently needed assistance to Ukraine, and the security assistance that we are now rushing to Ukraine will make a difference in this fight. The United States remains determined to do our part.
Secretary Austin's comments come as Ukraine's President Zelensky expressed frustration over the pace of Western military support. Speaking to Reuters news agency, he said that for every one big step forward, there are 2 steps back. A British court has ruled that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange can challenge his extradition to the U.S. His lawyers had argued that his free speech rights would not be protected if he was sent here to face trial. Supporters outside the court celebrated the decision. The Australian activist has been indicted on 17 espionage charges over the publication of classified U.S. military documents. His wife Stella called for U.S. authorities to drop the charges.
As a family, we're relieved. But how long can this go on? The United States should read the situation and drop this case now. Now is the moment to do it.
Assange has spent the last 5 years in a British prison after seeking refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in central London in 2012. Also in the UK, a public inquiry has concluded that a decades-old blood transfusion scandal was not an accident. It finds that Britain's National Health Service knowingly exposed tens of thousands of patients to HIV and hepatitis-tainted blood from the 1970s to the early 1990s, then tried to cover it up. An estimated 3,000 people are known to have died. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak apologized to the victims and their families today.
This is a day of shame for the British state. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. At every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
Sunak also said that the details of a $12 billion compensation package for victims will be announced on Tuesday. The chairman of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, is resigning. Martin Gruenberg is currently serving his 2nd term as head of the bank regulator. He's come under fire in recent months after an external review found evidence of a toxic workplace culture, including reports of employee mistreatment and sexual harassment. In a statement, Gruenberg said that, quote, "In light of recent events, I'm prepared to step down from my responsibilities once a successor is confirmed." On Wall Street today, stocks drifted to a mixed close in a quiet trading day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 196 points to close back below 40,000. The Nasdaq rose 108 points to notch a new closing high. The S&P 500 added 4 points. And a Wall Street-related passing of note. Ivan Boesky has died. A central figure to the insider trading scandals of the 1980s, he was also the basis for the Michael Douglas character Gordon Gekko in the film Wall Street. Boesky made his fortune betting on corporate takeover targets, often with the help of illegally obtained information. As part of a plea deal, he worked with authorities to bring others to justice, including the so-called junk bond king, Michael Milken. Boesky was 87 years old. Still to come, on the NewsHour, major questions surface about the future of artificial intelligence as tech firms showcase new products. Tamara Keith and Amy Walter break down the latest political headlines. And we get an inside look at a career retrospective of critically acclaimed artist Lorraine O'Grady.
This is the
Both and. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jared Bowen in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
And join us again here tomorrow night when we'll have our interview with late-night host Bill Maher. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Navaz. On behalf of the entire NewsHour team, thank you for joining us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Cunard is a proud supporter of public television. On a voyage with Cunard, the world awaits. A world of flavor, diverse destinations, and immersive experiences. A world of leisure and British style. All with Cunard's White Star.
Tonight, Donald Trump's defense team calling its first witness after the prosecution rested in his hush money trial. The drama in the courtroom, the judge clashing with one of the defense witnesses, warning not to give him, quote, side-eye. It came after Michael Cohen's final day on the stand and what he admitted to stealing from the Trump organization, our team at the courthouse. Also tonight, Iran's president confirmed dead in a helicopter crash along with 8 others. What caused it and how will it impact Middle East tensions? Plus his defiant words to me in his last U.S. network interview inside Iran before his death. The International Criminal Court seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Hamas leaders, accusing them of war crimes, how Netanyahu and the U.S. are firing back. A tornado outbreak, 17 across multiple states, and where the threat is headed tonight. Nearly 8 weeks after it destroyed that bridge in Baltimore, that massive ship finally moved out, the crew still on board. Sean Diddy Combs apologizing after video showed him violently attacking his ex-girlfriend, the growing fallout, and a powerful new memorial at the site, one of America's darkest chapters.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
You already heard about Kansas City Chiefs star Harrison Butker's speech at Benedictine College. He encouraged women to embrace their roles as homemakers, which the outraged mob called sexist, since none of them can cook a decent breakfast. My defense was simple. It's appropriate for the venue. Same thing I said when they ejected me from flash dancers for wearing pasties. He's a Catholic giving Catholic values at a Catholic university. Besides, if you want to hear a speaker promote abortion, drag queens, and destroying the family, just go to a children's library. But compare Butler's speech to Biden's commencement address at Morehouse College in Atlanta, where he started off strong by saying he was VP during the COVID-19 pandemic, which he meant to say the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. He was at a black college, so he pretended that it's the Republicans who are racist and not him, resulting in the worst race pandering since Rachel Dolezal OD'd on bronzer. Roll it.
Today in Georgia, they won't allow water to be available to you while you wait in line to vote in an election. What in the hell is that all about? I never thought I'd be a president of time when there's a national effort to ban books. Not to write history, but to erase history. They don't see you in the future of America, but they're wrong.
Sorry, the only history erased is from his short-term memory. He also bragged about ignoring the Supreme Court in a desperate move to buy student support and told them they face insane racism wherever they go.
I'm relieving the burden of student debt. Many of you have already had the benefit of it, so I can chase your dream and grow the economy. When the Supreme Court told me I couldn't, I found two other ways to do it. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. Most of all, what does it mean, as you've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
Well, nothing inspires college graduates like telling them they're But let's stop there then. Dana, there's more from there, but I'm just going to dump out. Where is Biden's speechwriter in all this? Like, what is this?
Oh, they all graduated from Grievance University because I would never allow somebody that I work for to give a speech like this at a commencement. And you have young black people who have just worked really hard, and they might be the first generation to go to college. And in front of all the parents, the president of the United States was like, yeah, you guys, you'll never amount to anything. And then when he said, you have to be 10 times better than anyone else, they were all thinking, wow, I could be 20 times better than you right now.
Pat, if he really wants to get rid of white supremacy, shouldn't he have just resigned? And then he's got a black lady right next to him. What's her name again?
Yeah, the speech, it was a little strange, you know, just like, hey, black people, a lot of people hate you. But don't worry, because I'm here. Like, ew, it's just so weird. And then, you know, the other commencement speech that was really controversial at the Catholic college, where he was saying Catholic stuff. I mean, I agree that I could not disagree more with his view of what a woman should be. With the way I live, I don't make dinner, I make money. Thank you. But my having a different view of the roles of a marriage, I've solved that problem with other people thinking that way by just not marrying those people.
It was pretty bleak, Dr. Drew.
Yeah. I noticed also he kept saying black men. What about black women?
Because it's a black men's college.
It's only male.
Yeah. Do your research, Dr. Drew.
I actually noticed that.
Doctor?
It was so... All right, my fault. My bad.
Can't you tell the difference between a man and a woman?
We'll talk about that soon. It's coming.
Go ahead.
About what?
Anything. Let me ask you this. Do you think there is a purpose to him being so stark and bleak?
I think it's not helpful.
Yeah.
First of all, it's anachronistic. I mean, that speech would have made sense some years ago. I think we should acknowledge that racism still persists, and we should always be making remedial remedies for it. But we're not in the past. I always keep saying, let's live in the year we're living in. We're not living in the year where you have to be 10 times better to succeed if you're a person of color. And in some instances, it's an advantage.
Yeah.
In some places, it's not an advantage. But we're not living in that world that he's talking about. And I don't think that helps anybody.
And the past is complicated. Didn't I just hear that Angela Davis found out that she's related to somebody that came over on the Mayflower?
Yes.
I mean, the past, I've been fascinated by the French struggling with presentism, exactly what you're writing about in the book. What's the book called again?
The book is called What This Comedian Said Will Shock You. It's funny when you see the cover. It looks like clickbait.
Yes, it does.
But they're trying to struggle with Napoleon, what to make of him. Did you know that he was not short?
Really?
He was average height for a Frenchman. And there were many things about him.
Unnecessary. Out of nowhere. All right.
You're short on time. Let me be.
Yeah. Up next, gender issues get muddy over another revealing study.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
The Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court sparks outrage as he seeks arrest warrants for both Israeli and Hamas leaders for their actions in the Gaza war, both sides saying there is no equivalence. Iran announces fresh elections within 50 days after the president and foreign minister are killed in a helicopter crash alongside 6 others. The first Vice President Mohammed Mokhber, taking the reins, announces 5 days of national mourning. And cheers from Julian Assange supporters. The WikiLeaks founder granted permission to appeal his extradition to the United States by London's High Court. He's wanted on espionage charges for leaking a massive trove of military secrets. Those of you just joining us, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Orcott. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister has lashed out at the Chief Prosecutor of the world's top war crimes court for seeking his arrest warrant alongside his Defense Minister, along with leaders from Hamas. Benjamin Netanyahu called it a twisted and false moral equivalence.
The outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the international court.
Well, the Hamas leaders have also condemned the move, saying the prosecutor's actions equate the victim with the executioner. Jenny Shin has the story.
A demand for accountability from both sides. The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants from Israel, as well as 3 Hamas leaders. The charges laid against the latter include extermination, sexual violence, and taking hostages as war crimes.
On the basis of evidence collected and examined and analyzed by my office, I have reasonable grounds to believe that 3 senior leaders of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Daif, and Ismail Haniyeh, bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of Israel and the State of Palestine from at least the 7th of October, 2023.
The ICC is also seeking warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, saying Israel's right to defend its population does not absolve its obligation to comply with international humanitarian law.
The tragic effect of the use of starvation as a method of warfare against Gaza's civilian population is acute, it's visible, and it's widely known. That starvation has caused and continues to cause deaths, malnutrition, dehydration, and profound suffering among the population. My office charges Netanyahu and Gallant as co-perpetrators and as superiors in the commission of these alleged crimes.
A decision met with outrage on both. ICC's decision equates the victim with the executioner, while Israel says the comparison is unacceptable after Hamas's October 7th massacre of its civilians. Israel is not a member of the ICC and does not recognize its jurisdiction, but the Palestinian territories were admitted as a member state in 2015. If granted, the warrant means that any of the 124 ICC member states would technically be obliged to arrest Netanyahu if he traveled there. The court, however, has no mechanism to enforce its warrants, relying on its members to abide by the rules. It's now up to the court's pre-trial judges to decide whether there is sufficient evidence to issue the warrants, a process that could take several weeks or months.
Next, Iran's allies, including China and Russia, have paid tribute to the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi following news he was among those killed in a helicopter crash. Iran has announced 5 days of national mourning. A minute of silence was also held at the UN Security Council at the request of the current Council President, the ambassador for Mozambique. Others were not so saddened by the news, including the United States, which said Raisi had blood on his hands. Many Iranians living overseas even celebrated.
In exile, rejoicing outside Iranian embassies in London and Berlin. The group describing Raisi's death as a monumental and irreparable strategic blow to the regime. The US called the late Iranian president a brutal participant in the repression of the Iranian people for nearly 4 decades.
We regret any loss of life. We don't want to see anyone die in a helicopter crash. But that doesn't change the reality of his record, both as a judge and as the president of Iran, the fact that he has blood on his hands.
And more muted reactions from Western capitals, as the International Atomic Energy Agency observed a minute's silence in Vienna. And NATO, the European Union and Japan sent their condolences to Tehran. The so-called axis of resistance groups were quick to mourn the Iranian leader's death. Palestinian militants Hamas, Lebanon's Hezbollah, and Yemen's Houthis all issued statements praising him. And other allies or regional neighbours of Iran also sent their condolences, such as Turkey, which said it was deeply saddened by the death of the Iranian leader and his delegation, and declared a national day of mourning in honour of the late president. Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences to the Iranian authorities. In a statement, the Russian president regretted the loss of a true friend of Russia, as did China, one of Iran's major trading partners. 8 other people also died in the helicopter crash, the cause still unknown.
London's High Court has given Julian Assange permission to appeal against extradition to the United States. The Australian-born 52-year-old is wanted on 18 charges, mostly linked to spying for the release of top-secret documents. His wife, Stella, welcomed the news.
The judges reached the right decision. As a family, we're relieved. But how long can this go on? The United States should read the situation and drop this case now. Now is the moment to do it. Just abandon this shameful attack on journalists, on the press, and the public that has been going on for 14 years.
Our London correspondent Benedict Pavio has been following the case and joined us with this update.
Victory today, significant day for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange here at the World Courts of Justice. He can bring a new appeal against his extradition to the US. That is the ruling of 2 senior judges. He was granted permission to appeal against the order that he be sent to the US to stand trial for leaking hundreds of thousands of military secrets. The decision today means that Mr. Assange will be able, in fact, to challenge the US assurances over how his prospective trial would be conducted and whether his right to free speech would be infringed. Now, the reaction was immediate, both inside the court, where Stella Assange and the lawyers embraced immediately. It doesn't mean that Julian Assange is freed. He remains, as for the last 5 years, in Belmarsh High Security Prison in London. Huge reaction outside from supporters who had gathered here early in the morning, from the former leader, Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party, also representatives of both the British press and journalism and international press bodies, because of the significance of this ruling. So a very important day, and now this possibility of continuing in the British judicial system and having a full hearing of all the arguments that they are putting against an extradition of Julian Assange to the US.
Well, Julian Assange has already spent well over a decade locked up, 7 years in self-imposed imprisonment at the Ecuadorian embassy in London before he was booted out into British custody. Emerald Maxwell takes a closer look.
Julian Assange was first thrust into the public eye in 2010. The site he founded, WikiLeaks, posted this leaked video showing an Apache helicopter airstrike by the US military in Iraq, in which civilians and 2 Reuters journalists were killed. WikiLeaks subsequently revealed 700,000 classified documents on US military and diplomatic activities, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's clear that it will shape an understanding of what the past 6 years of war has been like, and that the course of the war needs to change.
Most of the documents were acquired thanks to Chelsea Manning, a former US soldier whose 35-year sentence for espionage was commuted in 2017. The document dump also put Assange in Washington's crosshairs. 10 days earlier, a case against him for sexual assault against 2 women had been opened in Sweden. Assange has always denied the charges, and to evade extradition, in 2012 he obtained political asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. WikiLeaks continued operating and, during the 2016 US presidential elections, published a trove of emails from Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton's server. Things got complicated for Assange in 2019. Ecuador withdrew its asylum, and Assange was arrested by British police. The charges against him in Sweden were eventually dropped, but the United States began extradition proceedings to bring Assange to the US on charges of espionage. Supporters say these charges are politically motivated, with wider consequences for journalists and whistleblowers.
An Australian citizen publishing in Europe can face prison time in the United States. That means that no journalist anywhere, including you in this room today, are safe.
Since its establishment in 2006, WikiLeaks has published more than 10 million documents, many of them classified. Assange's supporters see him as a champion of free speech, holding governments accountable for their actions. But critics say his actions undermined the security of the West and endangered sources and informants in war zones.
Now, victims of the biggest treatment scandal in the history of Britain's National Health Service have welcomed the findings of an inquiry, the bombshell report, finding a catalogue of failures that led to catastrophic consequences that were then covered up by the government. In the 70s, 80s and 90s, more than 30,000 people were infected with viruses, including HIV and hepatitis, after receiving transfusions either after surgery or as treatment for blood disorders. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak pledged compensation to the victims, expected to run into the billions of pounds, and offered an apology.
Today I want to speak directly to the victims and their families, some of whom are with us in the gallery. I want to make a wholehearted and unequivocal apology for this terrible injustice. First, to apologise for the failure in blood policy and blood products, and the devastating and so often fatal impact it's had on so many lives, including the impact of treatments that were known or proved to be contaminated, the failure to respond to the risk of imported concentrates, the failure to prioritise self-sufficiency in blood, the failure to introduce screening services sooner.
Now, Australia and New Zealand have announced they're sending flights to rescue their nationals from the nearby French Pacific Islands that make up New Caledonia. Protesters on the archipelago are refusing to abandon their paralysing roadblocks, even after Paris sent in hundreds of members of the security services to restore order. The unrest has erupted as a result of voting reforms being imposed by France that indigenous people say will leave them even more marginalised. Meanwhile, Haiti's main international airport has reopened for the first time in almost 3 months. It's expected to help ease a critical shortage of medicines and other basic supplies. Flights were halted due to relentless gang violence in Port-au-Prince, which saw more than 2,500 people killed in the first 3 months of this year alone. We're ending back here in Paris, where we're just over 2 months away from the start of the Olympic Games. Tickets have been selling like hotcakes, though it's not been the case for the Paralympics. As the 100-day countdown began, to remedy this, the Olympic Committee has launched a new advertising campaign.
We're not missing anything, except you. That's the slogan of the new campaign released by Paris 2024 to encourage people to buy Paralympics tickets after sluggish sales. Gael is a Paralympian for France's blind football team and a silver medalist at London 2012. He's aiming for gold in Paris and is counting on public support.
The public has to be there to support us. It will help us perform. But also, for the party to be great, we need people to share this moment with, and the more there are, the more emotional it will be.
Time is of the essence, though, as with 100 days to go till the Paralympic opening ceremony, only a third of the 2.8 million tickets have been sold, and largely by the French state and local authorities. But the head of Paris 2024's organising committee hopes that the message gets through.
At the moment, we're in the middle of the sale period for this edition of the Games, so we're not too worried. But it's true that we want there to be the same excitement, the same fervour, the same passion for the Paralympic Games as for the Olympic Games.
The Paralympic Games will take place at the same venues used by the Olympics across Paris. Tickets are available online, starting at €15.
Stay tuned for more world news on France 24.
Today, Telstra to sack up to 2,800 workers by the end of the year.
This is a very hard day for many of our teams right across Telstra.
Evacuation flights heading to New Caledonia to pick up Australians after riots rocked the capital and shut down the airport. Trapped in a war zone, the Australian doctor fearing for his life after Israel blocks the only way in and out of Gaza. And new laws expected to be approved, making curfews easier to impose in the Northern Territory. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. Telstra is planning to sack up to 2,800 workers, or 9% of its workforce, as part of measures aimed at resetting the business, simplifying operations and improving productivity. The telco says the majority of the job cuts
for many of our teams right across Telstra.
Evacuation flights heading to New Caledonia to pick up Australians after riots rocked the capital and shut down the airport. Trapped in a war zone, the Australian doctor fearing for his life after Israel blocks the only way in and out of Gaza. And new laws expected to be approved, making curfews easier to impose in the Northern Territory. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. Telstra is planning to sack up to 2,800 workers, or 9% of its workforce, as part of new cost-cutting measures. They're aimed at resetting the business, simplifying operations and improving productivity. The telco says the majority of the job cuts will happen by the end of the year. CEO Vicky Brady says Telstra will also focus on non-labour related ways to reduce costs.
I shared these details about the proposed job impacts with the teams across Telstra earlier this morning.
Link the team.
Thanks, Michael. The federal government is sending 2 planes to New Caledonia to pick up stranded Australians. Around 300 people have registered for assistance after riots shut down New Caledonia's international airport. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts has more.
The government hasn't yet said exactly when they'll depart, when they'll land, or when they'll come back to Australia, although you'd imagine that they'll simply land in New Caledonia, pick up those tourists and then bring them back. Not just Australians, incidentally. The Australian government's made it clear it's also open to helping other nationalities, people from countries perhaps like Fiji, which has flagged Australian assistance as well. So we'll have to wait and see, 1, exactly when those flights land, 2, how many people they bring back, and which in fact departed New Zealand not that long ago to pick up its stranded citizens as well.
Stephen, thank you. The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, as well as several Hamas leaders, for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. Chief Prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, wants Hamas leaders to be held responsible for the October 7th attacks. He's also accusing Israel of causing profound suffering in Gaza through its attacks on civilians and what he calls the use of starvation as a weapon of warfare.
National law and the laws of armed conflict apply to everyone. No foot soldier, no commander, no civilian leader. No one can act with impunity.
Hamas has rejected the ICC prosecutor's decision. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also dismissed the allegations and strongly criticised the move.
The ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel, and Mr. Khan's actions will not stop us from waging our just war against Hamas. But Mr. Khan's abuse of this authority will turn the ICC into nothing more than a farce. He's doing something else. He is callously pouring gasoline on the fires of anti-Semitism that are raging across the world.
US President Joe Biden says it's outrageous the International Criminal Court is applying for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders over alleged war crimes. Speaking at a Jewish American Heritage Month event at the White House, Mr. Biden says the US is against the ICC's move.
Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has refused to be drawn into the ICC's bid, saying he won't discuss the court action, but has reiterated the government's priorities in the conflict. The opposition leader Peter Dutton says Mr. Albanese needs to take a tougher stance.
Call for the release of hostages. We've called for a humanitarian ceasefire. We've called for increased humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza. We've said that every life matters, whether it be Israeli or Palestinian, and we've called for progress towards a 2-state solution. That is where we are concentrating.
And he's tarnishing and damaging our international relationships with like-minded nations when he's not strong enough to stand up alongside President Biden. And I very strongly support the comments of Joe Biden today in relation to the ICC. It's an abomination and it needs to be ceased. This action is anti-Semitic and it is against the interests of peace in the Middle East.
An Australian doctor is trapped in Gaza after Israel closed the only way in and out of the besieged coastal enclave. The volunteer physician from Sydney has been stuck since the Rafah border crossing was seized at the start of this month, and he's told the ABC he fears for his life.
Inside one of Gaza's says it's working with Israel to get Dr. al-Beiruti home. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been granted a final chance to appeal his extradition to the United States. The British High Court ruling came after lawyers argued the Australian could be discriminated against because of his nationality.
At the 11th hour, hearing is set. Catherine Biss, ABC News, London.
Iran has declared 5 days of mourning after the country's president died in a helicopter crash. Hundreds of supporters have gathered in the capital Tehran to mourn the loss of Ibrahim Raisi. He died along with his foreign minister and 6 others when the aircraft went down in poor weather near Iran's northern border. A Turkish news vlogger filmed the debris blanketed by thick fog, and state TV showed rescue workers carrying a body away from the scene. A vote to choose a successor to Raisi will be held next month. Prosecutors in Donald Trump's New York criminal trial have rested their case. His former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was the last witness for prosecutors who alleged the former president falsified business records to cover up a hush money payment. Mr. Cohen said he knew the payments made to a porn star before the 2016 election violated federal law. Under cross-examination, the defense attacked Mr. Cohen's credibility, and he admitted stealing money from the Trump organization. The defense has begun calling its own witnesses, but it's not yet clear whether Mr. Trump will take the stand. New laws making it easier to impose curfews in the Northern Territory are being debated in the Territory Parliament today. It comes more than a month after a controversial youth curfew ended in Alice Springs. Reporter Charmaine Allison has more from Alice Springs.
These new laws would allow the NT Police Commissioner to call a snap 3-day curfew. The government argues the legislation it used for issues in this outback town.
Charmaine, thank you. The states and territories have launched a fresh fight against the federal government over proposed changes to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. In a joint submission, the states have blasted the Commonwealth for its overhaul of the scheme, saying it could lead to worse outcomes for Australians with a disability. Political reporter Stephanie Boris has the details.
This all relates to the changes that
on CNA. This is Asia Now.
Good morning. It's 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Alekia Silveraji. Headlines this hour.
Israel and Hamas both angrily reject moves to arrest their leaders for war crimes made before an international court as heavy fighting rages in the Gaza Strip. Iran announces 5 days of mourning following the death of its President Ibrahim Raisi, with funeral rites set to begin today. Experts say the Iranian regime is unlikely to change course in the near term, but his death could affect crucial succession plans. India concludes its 5th leg of voting in the 7th-phase election, with the western state of Maharashtra recording a low voter turnout. This election is especially important to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's seeking a 3rd term in office. Israel and Hamas have rejected moves to arrest their leaders for war crimes made before an international court. Karim Khan, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, stated his intent to make top Israeli and Hamas leaders bear criminal responsibility over the Gaza conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. US college campuses saw anti-Israel protests of an almost unprecedented scale last month, and it prompted President Joe Biden to pause arms delivery to Israel. But does this signal a change in US policy towards Israel, or simply a hiccup in a so-called ironclad relationship? Benji Haya reports from New York in the first of our 3-part series on how the Gaza war has affected dynamics between the key players in the Middle East.
United will never be defeated! For weeks, this dominated news in the United States.
It's a genocide. People in Palestine are not being even spoken about.
And the Zionist state of Israel has been committing ongoing massacres for 7 months now.
Calls to boycott Israel, to stop supplying the country with weapons. The people, united, will never be divided! Vows to never back down. Never be divided!
Here is where it all began, Columbia University in New York. The college cancelled its main commencement ceremony in response to the encampment. Instead, graduates have amassed for their own end-of-year student-led celebrations. But the mood is more muted, and the protesters' aims remain unfulfilled.
Now there's little talk of Gaza at Hamilton Hall, once the scene of a siege by students. Palestine stickers stripped away, a rare remnant of past protest. There is still resistance. At Duke University in North Carolina, a handful of attendees at its commencement walked out to be seen in months to come if the attitudes which inspired the anti-Israel protests remain entrenched within the hallways of Washington and beyond, and if they'll ultimately cost Joe Biden his re-election bid. Benji Haya, CNA, New York.
And your Asia Business Update is coming up next with Olivia Marzuki. Well, Olivia, Microsoft has a new personal computer with an AI difference.
Yes, Ella, you know the IT giant says its new AI-ready PCs open up a new era for computers with their AI chatbot recalling everything we do on our computers. Plus, cryptocurrency Ethereum on a rally amid rising speculation that US regulators may approve an exchange-traded fund backed by the digital asset.
CNA, a warm congratulations on 25 fabulous years.
A big blow to former South African leader Jacob Zuma after the country's top court declares he cannot stand in the national election next week because of previous criminal conviction. A big blow to former South African President Jacob Zuma. The country's constitutional court on Monday declared that the former leader cannot stand in the national election next week because of a previous criminal conviction. Zuma was sentenced to 15 months in prison in 2021 by the Constitutional Court for contempt for refusing to testify at a judicial inquiry into government corruption. The Constitutional Court said that a section of the Constitution disqualifying people from standing for office if they've been sentenced to more than 12 months in prison without the option of a fine does apply to the 82-year-old Zuma. He was initially disqualified by the Independent Electoral Committee that runs the South Africa's elections before he won an appeal to the Electoral Court. We say that because he didn't have any appeal options against the content ruling, it doesn't apply in this situation. The Constitutional Court overturned that on Monday. He said Zuma is not allowed to run parliament for 5 years from when his sentence was completed.
The Congolese government has condemned what it called a coup attempt on the presidency. A statement from the Ministry of Communication said the attack aimed at destabilizing the country's institutions. Residents of the capital Kinshasa expressed shock at the events. In any case, we are in a democratic country, so we cannot accept these kinds of coups that are attempted at any time. This country has a president, Felix Tshisekedi, President of the Republic. As a citizen, I condemn this act. It may have had bad connotations in the country. If our leaders are attacked, why not ask the people? The government statement cited Christian Malanga, a self-exiled political figure, as the mastermind. Christian Malanga, I don't know him, but I'm happy with what they've done. Vital Kamerhe shouldn't be there. The African Union chief also condemned the coup attempt in a statement on Sunday.
The death of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi is seen as a big loss to the country's leadership, with analysts saying this will pave way to a new leadership in the Middle East country. Analysts now say that together with the country's foreign minister will usher in a period of political instability, as Iran will have to organize an election within 2 months, a scenario they were not prepared for.
State and the foreign minister is a very big deal. What the Islamic Republic is going to do instead is to show that its processes and its institutions will continue to function, and it's going to try to show a commitment to those processes, take forward the elections that are meant to be held within a 2-month period. That will all be certainly hard to deliver while also generating public support, but I very much suspect that they're going to remain committed to that and at the same time try to celebrate and commemorate Ibrahim Raisi's life as a martyr of the Islamic Republic.
Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei announced Monday that Iran's first Vice President Mohammad Mokhber will serve as the country's acting president until elections are held.
I don't believe that they're going to pick a shadowy figure that doesn't have a huge amount of name recognition to fill such an important post. They're going to find someone that can maintain ideological legitimacy and protect the system. And they're going to have to find an individual that has that ideological as well as public connectivity.
The crash comes as the Middle East remains unsettled by the Israel-Hamas war, during which Raisi launched an unprecedented drone and missile attack on Israel just last month.
99.8% of internet users in Ghana aged between 16 to 64 years owned a mobile phone of any type in 2023, according to data. This vegetable farmer, Cyril Fianyo, being one of them in a village in the Volta region, believes his business has the opportunity to expand now that he's able to use the internet on his phone.
I like searching on the phone so much, on phone so much. So when I got it, I saw this phone is very smart. So I don't find it difficult to get some information that I want.
Access to mobile internet is driving economic development in Africa, but the cost of buying a phone and data is still a major obstacle. One mobile company called Unity Networks in Ghana says it has a plan to close the digital gap. Though Unity Networks aims to reach low-income populations, the importance of mobile internet and apps to carrying out business in Ghana stretches across the socio-economic spectrum. Both farmers and traders are now relying more on smart apps for their business.
I actually get my orders from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, WhatsApp, and a normal text message. And without internet, you will not be able to get all these access. So I think having a mobile phone and a smartphone and internet, you can be able to work.
85% of the sub-Saharan region is covered by networks, according to the mobile lobby group GSMA.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.